Welcome to the Friendly Moms Club podcast. I'm Jen.
I'm Karlee, and we're the new mom friends you didn't know you needed. It's a sort of beautiful day, but we have
Happy
a new...
Mom Day!
Oh, yes.
You
oh,
forgot.
my goodness.
The most important thing we say.
Rewind. Happy Mom Day.
Happy Mom Day, Karlee.
It's somewhat a beautiful day. It's nice outside, and we have a nice new setup.
We're trying something new out.
Doing different things because we may have some visitors soon, and not just the visitors that are growing inside of Jen.
Or the cats.
Or the cats, yes. I mean, we like all the visitors, but we may have some
people visitors.
Yeah, some real ones.
Some guests that are going to be coming soon.
Yeah.
So we wanted to try out something new so that we have,
space for them.
Nice space to chat and sit and
Make it cute, keep
see
it
how
fancy.
It goes today. Yeah.
We'll see. If you hate it, don't tell us because we don't want to know.
Yeah.
All right, we got a big one today. We actually are starting our new series about the emotions of motherhood because it's something that Jen and I and like all of our mom friends, we talk about a lot in person. Like we have a lot of like very deep conversations about this.
Yeah.
And we were like, you know what? We need to bring that to the podcast because if we're feeling these emotions and our friends are feeling these emotions, then likely you guys are also feeling these emotions, and a lot of them come with a lot of like guilt. They bring more emotions, guilt and shame and grief.
Yeah, they're very heavy emotions. They're
very
not just
heavy.
Like love, and even love is a heavy emotion. And like Karlee made a reel about this, but like your love is so great for your child that it almost becomes overwhelming and really hard at one point. Like it's just hard. It's a lot. There's a lot of really heavy emotions that come into play.
Definitely, and we're both going through big transitional phases right now with going back to work. Jen's expecting baby number 2. Babies are starting daycare. Like there's a lot going on, and all of that is bringing up a lot of emotions, things from the past, things that we're projecting from the past, things that we're anticipating for the future.
Yeah.
So
it's just a lot. So we just wanted to share some of our kind of, our journey and some of the emotions that we've gone through, and hopefully it resonates with some of you guys and you don't feel like alone in some of those moments of anger and guilt and shame, and because we're all feeling them. And I think it's valid to feel those emotions, and it's good to kind of say it out loud and allow space for it, because then it takes away some of the shame when you can actually talk about it out loud.
It's also like cathartic when you talk about it, like a good cry.
Yeah.
I love a good cry. I need it. And I feel like both of us have our emotions like up to here, and they just need to like get out. So maybe this will be like a therapy session for both of us.
I know.
So grab a box of tissues. I don't know why I didn't. I can see it across the room. So if I need to, but we also got our shirts. You got lots of shirts.
I'm good.
Share. We're good. So today, the Emotions of Motherhood series is going to start off with a conversation about all of the emotions that came up when we were trying to get pregnant. It was heavy and dark for me. I knew it was going to be hard, and it wasn't until I was in the thick of it that I realized, wow, this is like some heavy, heavy stuff. And then what's interesting is that during it, it felt very difficult. And then I got pregnant and it got even harder. And then I had a baby and it got even harder. Like everything compounds and becomes harder with more layers. But during the trying to conceive process, like I was a hot mess. Like I had the thoughts I had, the things I thought about other people. We'll get into it, but it was they weren't pretty. There was no pretty thoughts. So
no, same thing. I didn't think it was going to be easy, but it brought up like a whole nother side to me that I didn't know existed. Like
nasty stuff.
Yeah. Like not a happy side to me. Like it was not, it's hard because we didn't struggle with infertility for a very long time. We didn't use fertility treatments. Like we both ended up getting pregnant within about a year, right? Yeah. So we didn't struggle with infertility for a long time, but even our year-long journey was still really heavy, really hard, and brought up a lot. So I think it's a lot more common than we think that a lot of people don't just get pregnant within the first couple months of trying. I know that happens for people, and that's great, but there's a lot of women. I don't know what it is with PCOS. It's like 1 in 5 women have PCOS. It's common. So that's a lot of women that might struggle with fertility issues because they have PCOS or other hormonal diseases. And think there's a lot out there. So,
and a lot of times people don't get diagnosed with PCOS until they try to get pregnant.
Yes.
And they're like, oh, I'm not having a period. I'm not actually ovulating. I've been trying for X number of months and nothing's happening. And then they are diagnosed with PCOS.
Yeah. You might need to take medication just to ovulate like that. And that's a lot of, I know so many moms out there that's what they had to do to get pregnant. So they didn't have to go IVF or IUI, but they did take medication just to make sure they were ovulating so that they could get pregnant. So there's a lot of different levels of intervention that you can get into, and we'll talk about what levels that we got to and what we did. But let's just start off with, what were your kind of thoughts going into the trying to conceive journey?
I was already an emotional mess when it came to having babies, because I felt like everybody I knew was having babies when I wanted to have babies, but I wasn't at a place in my life where it was reasonable for us to start our family. So when I started nursing school, I think I was 28, and I knew that I wanted to have kids, and I did the math. I was like, okay, well then when I graduate, I'm going to be almost 32 or turning 32, and then I'm going to want to work for a bit. And I was like, oh, I'll be fine. But then when I hit 30, it's like that internal biological clock, just bing, the alarms went off. And I had this this need to bear children, and I couldn't satisfy it because maybe we could have, but there was a lot of moving parts going on in my life, and I'm very I have to plan everything. I'm not when it comes to life decisions, I'm not spontaneous that way. So,
which is fair.
Yeah.
It's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, society tells us when you hit 30, you need to want to have kids. That's almost like a societal expectation. So it makes sense that you had that overwhelming feeling.
And then biologically too, it was this burning sensation. So
inside of,
it came up a lot in therapy, how I felt like I was getting left behind with all of my friends, and especially friends that were younger than me that had already bought houses and were already having babies. And I just felt like it brought back a lot of emotions from childhood of being left out. And being left out of things either intentionally or not intentionally, and just not fitting in. And it brought up a lot of that. So by the time we actually went to start trying, I just I was already a hot mess.
Yeah.
But what about you?
That's fair.
Yeah. Oh, and I do want to add quickly that I originally, when in my 20s, I was diagnosed with PCOS. So in the back of my head, I was like, it's never going to happen for me. It's going to be hard. I'm barren. And I always said oh, if I can have children, I never believed that I could, which does not help the process because I'm not super woo-woo with manifestation stuff, but I do actually think that what you put out there does make a difference.
Power of positive thoughts.
Yes, for sure. Yes. And then it turned out I didn't actually have true PCOS. I had post-pill PCOS, which is a newer lingo. So it was just, I was on the pill for so long. It took me years, 2 or 3 years to finally start ovulating, but now everything's good. But
now working.
What about you?
Well, similar. I was diagnosed with PCOS when I was a teenager, very early on. The blood work came back. I was having all sorts of issues. So I knew from an early age that I had hormonal issues going on. And I had that diagnosis, but then a few years later, I was having all these other problems. And then a few years after that, I was finally diagnosed with endometriosis. And with endometriosis, it's very common that you can have fertility issues or you could be infertile altogether.
Another one commonly diagnosed during, they come to suspect it when trying to get pregnant.
It's an average of 10 years to get a diagnosis for endometriosis in Canada. It's unreal.
Often need surgery in Canada.
To actually get a real diagnosis, they have to surgically go in and biopsy. So it's just very hard to get that, and a lot of doctors aren't knowledgeable in it, and it's a very long journey to get this.
You mean old white men don't know about women's reproductive health?
I had a female doctor that told me it was all in my head, actually. And she was a younger female doctor, and she said, you're just stressed. There's nothing wrong with you. You're making up this pain. Long story short, I switched doctors, and I got laparoscopic surgery, and they took biopsies, and they ended up removing it so they can surgically go in and excise all the areas of endometriosis they find, and they biopsied it and diagnosis of endometriosis. But then I had another specialist that told me, you need to have kids right now. You probably aren't going to be able to have kids because you have PCOS and endometriosis, so your best chance is right now. And I remember crying leaving the appointment because I was I'm not in a position to have kids. I'm not going to have kids because the doctor told me to have kids. I need to actually be in a position. I was single at the time. I was what am I going to do? Who am I going to even have kids with?
One night stand.
Right? It's not practical. So I actually went to my family doctor, and I'm lucky that I have a very good family doctor. And I told her this, and she looked at me. She's like, do you want kids right now? I was like, no. And she's like, then don't have kids. Like, don't listen because some specialist told you need to have a baby right now. Like, that's not a reason to have a baby. Like, don't do it. So it was very good that she was there to kind of like set me straight. But ever since that doctor's appointment, it's been in the back of my mind. It's like, I'm not going to be able to have kids. So when I started seeing, like, dating my now husband, it was always like, I think I said it very early on. Like, I don't know if I can have kids. Like, if that's a deal breaker for you. Like, I'm not sure it's going to happen. Like, doctors have told me this. And so he was kind of like, no, that's okay. Like, if we have kids, great. If we don't, that's okay. Like, it was always like if it happens, cool, but we don't need it. So I think I went in so negative, like prepared for it not to happen, because my body had failed me so many times before that I just was prepared for it to fail again. And like you said, it's not a good mindset to go into this fertility journey with. Like, it was just, and it was kind of like, okay, we'll try, but it's not going to happen. Like, it was so negative. And then when it didn't happen right away, of course, I thought like cool as a cucumber. Like, if it doesn't happen in a couple months, like, that's cool. I'll take it. Even if it's negative, like, that's okay. Well, it was not okay. Every negative test, like, it just, it was. So I was also very negative going into it and didn't think it would happen. And I don't think that helps anything.
No.
Okay.
So give us a quick summary of your TTC trying to conceive journey with baby number 1.
It was about a year. And we actually got referrals to go to the fertility clinic and start getting tests done. Because of my history, they started it a bit sooner than I think the average person, because they're like, we also don't know if you're going to get, like, they also kind of thought that. So they were starting the paperwork quite early. I think at like 6 or 7 months, they started the paperwork. Anyways, but we ended up naturally getting pregnant without any medications or any other interventions. And it was just, like, I didn't believe it when it happened, because I was like, this can't actually be true. And then there's more emotions to when you do finally get the pregnancy. We'll get to that later on. But
yeah, that's next episode.
But no, I was like obsessive compulsive, like, testing. I didn't do my temperature, but I had a lot of the ovulation sticks. I was peeing on those all the time because I have irregular periods. I'm all over the place with all my hormonal problems. So I had no idea when I ovulated. I don't ovulate the same time. My cycles could be anywhere from like 25 days to like 38 days. So every month was a completely new guessing game of when I was even ovulating. So it's very hard to conceive when you don't know your ovulation window. So then I was kind of forced into doing it. Oh, there's so much. I have so many health problems. I also have vulvodynia, and so I have a lot of pain with intercourse. So when that comes into play, I don't have the luxury of just like being able to have sex all the time, like every day, multiple times a day, trying to get pregnant. Like, it's actually can be very painful, and it can take time for my body to recover to be able to have sex again. So then that came into play with trying to conceive. And that's just, it's like another mind game that, like, I had to like mentally prepare myself.
A lot of people are like, oh, like, having sex is the fun part when having babies. One of my coworkers said that to me once. I was like, oh, gotta go home and have sex. And she was like, that's the fun part. And I'm like, clearly you've never tried to have a child.
Yes.
Or you've never tried, like, she doesn't have kids, but like, or you have never tried for longer than like a couple of months. Like, sure, the first few months, ooh, it's so fun. We get to like,
it should be fun. I agree. It should be fun.
Yeah. But when you start trying to have a baby, you take sex from this thing that we've always done recreationally and for fun, and now it's purposeful.
You're putting pressure on it.
There's pressure, there's like performance pressure, and it's actually for a purpose. Like, yes, sure, it's to make a family and combine your DNA, blah, blah, blah. But like, it's not very romantic.
No, I mean, it can be, taking your temperature and you go home and tell your husband, like, you have to have sex now, like, he's also not going to be in the mood. So it's going to put a lot of pressure, and so there's a whole other side of things that I didn't mentally prepare for that would be hard, that it was very hard for us. So
I didn't think I was going to be questioning whether or not my body could function the way that it gets, in air quotes, like supposed to. And I knew it was going to be hard. And I was like, I'm like Jen said, I'm going to be calm and cool, and it's going to just happen when it's supposed to happen. And then literally the first month I was peeing on one of the like early detection tests like a week before.
And those things are expensive.
I learned the hard way. Don't buy those all the time. You get the ones off Amazon.
Yeah.
That don't
Amazon ones, great.
Yeah. That also don't come with all the plastic, which is also good because those, but it's very hard to approach it in like calm, collected, easy breezy, I'm lemon squeezy, when you're also, because of other things that have gone on in your life, you've questioned whether or not your body actually works like it's supposed to. Or if you've ever, like for me, like I had been through loss and some trauma childhood, and then as a adult as well, that I was convinced that just bad things were going to keep happening to me. And if it happened to me before, then why isn't it going to happen when I go to have a baby? And that even I thought, like, if I do get pregnant, I'm going to have a loss. And it's not just going to be, you know, a standard, not that any miscarriage is standard, but it's going to be, you know, like a Meredith Grey's Anatomy version, operating room and bleeding all out and somebody's life's on the, you know, like that's where my brain went.
Worst case scenario.
Yeah. That's
what
that's called. Yeah. And same with Jen, it took us about a year. We never got the like diagnosis of infertility, because I believe in Canada, if you're under 35, the definition, like the diagnosis of infertility is if you've been trying for over 1 year. Although the next baby, I will be over 35. So at the 6-month mark, I think we can get referred if we try for that long.
It has changed recently. I believe it used to be a year, but I think in the last few years it's changed that you can get a referral after 6 months, regardless of your age, is my understanding. But we're going to look into this.
My doctor poo-pooed that. There was a caveat that if you had any kind of diagnosis that would affect your fertility, but I had at that time was diagnosed with PCOS, but my old family doctor, she's now retired, but she was not... Yeah, she was like, just go have fun and go have sex with your husband. And okay, lady, thanks. I didn't know how procreation worked. Like, anyways, not supportive, not helpful.
I know, you want it to be fun. You really do want it to be fun and like spontaneous, and you want it to be enjoyable, but it just turns out that a lot of times it's actually not.
It's not, no.
And I know lots of doctors that was their advice. Like, I know a friend and they were told, just like, go have a glass of wine, like let yourself feel good and just like, you know, have good sex, and which is all fine and dandy. But if you've been trying for a long time, you're just exhausted, and it's like, it's like a mental game of like getting yourself up, like pumped to do it and like be in the mood. And then you're also kind of like setting yourself up for failure, because you know you're going to be disappointed when you're all negative, and it's like a negative feedback loop that just keeps on going. And so to get yourself out of that, to be able to have sex in a happy place is just very difficult.
Definitely. And you know, it's comical now looking back. I'm like annoyed this happened. The month we did get pregnant was the month I think it was month 11 of trying. We were like, okay, what we're doing isn't working. It's not like, doesn't feel intimate, doesn't feel like we're connecting in any way. It feels very like a chore and a burden, and it became very like monotonous and not exciting. So the month that we actually did get pregnant was the month we were like, I know around when I ovulate, so instead of focusing on that, let's just have sexy week and just have a fun week. And
I like that, sexy week.
And that's the month I got pregnant.
But they say, because it's a mental game too, like when you're not stressed and you're not overthinking it and you're in a more positive place, like the chances of getting pregnant are higher. Definitely. We were talking about this over lunch today. Like your body keeps score. Like your mental health and your like what you are thinking does play a part in your physical health. Definitely. And they are interconnected, and there's science now proving that. So if you are just convinced it's not going to happen, well, it might not happen. Like there is something to this, just like trying to let go and bring the fun back, and it's just easier said than done. And we just want to recognize that a doctor can tell you all you want to just have fun, like don't worry. But wait, that's very hard to do. So I mean, I'm glad you guys had sexy week.
Sexy week.
And it did work out, but
I also got my fertility dust. This is my, you know how everybody always says baby dust when you're trying to get pregnant? It's like a common like motivational phrase in like the fertility world. So I got my baby dust tattooed to me.
Oh, I like
and then I got pregnant. But I also, the month I got pregnant, started spotting, and I was like, oh, my period's here. And it was the first time in all the 11 months that I said to my husband, you know what? That's okay. We're going to be positive. I got my baby dust. It's going to happen. And I actually was like, it's okay. But it wasn't my period. It was actually, I don't know.
Implantation maybe?
Yeah, it could have been. I don't know the timing wise, if that made sense timing wise. But yeah, it wasn't my period, because
I've since learned in this second trying to conceive that you do bleed sometimes. And doctors are like, it's normal to have some blood, to have some spotting. Like I passed a blood clot this time, and he was like, yeah, that's normal. It happens. I was like,
what?
Like I went to the emergency room thinking I had a miscarriage, but like, it's like, no, blood clots, you just pass them. Like it's very actually normal to have some spotting and or blood clots and just old blood coming out. So I don't know. The ER doctor told me it's very normal.
It is, yeah. I mean, there's a lot going on there in your uterus. So
Yeah.
let's jump to this one here and then maybe circle on back.
Yeah.
So one thing that, like when we talk about feeling nasty, one thing like I was not expecting was how I would feel when I saw pregnancy announcements. So did you have that at all? Like when you saw announcements or people told you were pregnant or...
I didn't have it too bad because I was so convinced it wasn't going to happen. Like, I think I just told myself it was fine for so long that I had like a mental block when it came to it.
Like you had your blinders on.
Yeah, like I just was like, oh, cool, good for them. It's not meant to be for us. Like it didn't affect me as much as I know that it did affect other people. So tell me about that.
I was not a very nice human in my head. I mean, okay, it was like...
It's fair.
Yeah. And it was hard because like truly deep down, I was happy for them. But it was more of the feeling of like, well, why can't we be doing this together? Like, I want you to be pregnant, but I also want me to be pregnant so that we can go through this journey together. And it went back to the whole like feeling left out and I'm never going to be able to fit in because I'm never going to be a mom, or like maybe it's because I'm not good enough to be a mom, or
I don't deserve to be a mom.
Yeah. And it really went back to the feeling of like, I'm getting left behind. Everybody else's bodies works perfectly normal. And you just like assume everyone else had an easier time, which is really, really hard. Like you don't, like some people don't want to air, not that this is dirty laundry, but air all of their personal information about their journey getting pregnant on the internet. Some people do. I shared a little bit, but people post their announcements and you never know if it took them years, if it was IVF, if they maybe had multiple losses. And I noticed when I did start sharing about my struggles trying to get pregnant, I had so many people message me and share their stories. And the number of those people that when I saw their announcement, like it triggered me and I got so upset. And then to hear they kind of were in the trenches with me as well, having those same feelings, I was like, huh.
So did you feel a little like, I guess I jumped the gun on those bad feelings, like, that judgment?
Interesting. But also... like,
you didn't know.
I didn't know.
You judged based on the information you had.
Of course. And I didn't...
I mean, not that you should judge everyone, but I get it. Like, when you're emotionally in that place and you're so vulnerable, it's very easy. I know lots of women who have gone through this. Like, you just get jealous.
It was very painful.
And everyone's life looks perfect on social media. So it's very easy to get triggered with social media because you see the perfect family and they go on all these vacations and they have the perfect life, their perfect husband. But so many people that I know are in the worst relationships have the best social media life, right? So you never know truly what's going on in someone's life.
And you also like don't want them to be having a shitty life. It's just that like, let's just both have good lives together. Like why? Yeah, I cried for like a week when one of my friends told me they were pregnant. Actually, yes, I heard from my husband first, from like he heard from the dad, but I have always really wanted a May baby because I'm born in May and my mom's born in May. And by the time August rolled around, when we were trying to get pregnant, we'd been trying for like, I don't know, maybe like 7 months at that point, 8 months, 9 months, I don't know. We started in January. What month is August? 8. So it'd been 8 months. So like I was kind of getting to the point where I was like, okay, like, why isn't this happening? Like, I was cool and calm and collected. I was never, like, literally for a day. But when I got my period in August, I was, like, absolutely devastated because I was like, well, now I don't get my May baby. And then we had visited some friends that month, and I just, like, knew. I was like, she's pregnant, and she just doesn't want us to know yet, which is fair. Like, people tell people when they're ready. But I just knew it. Like, I knew it in my gut, and it was, like, devastating to me because I knew I wasn't, and we weren't going to, like, our husbands were childhood best friends, and I was like, this would be so perfect if we could just have babies together, and they can grow up together, and then back to those same feelings of, like, why does, I'm going to be left out. Why can't this just happen for me? It's happening for everybody else. And then I think when she did tell me that she was pregnant, she was quite far along. And I like literally cried for a week because I just, in my head was like, one, it's never going to happen for me. And two, like life is just unfair. I was like, I want a May baby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you have to go to any like baby showers or anything like that while you were trying to conceive? Because I feel like that's really hard for people when you're visibly seeing it in your friends and you're seeing their belly grow, like or going to baby showers. I feel like that like elevates
makes it harder.
Bad feelings.
Well, this friend, by the time her baby shower rolled around, I was pregnant. So, but then you know what? The baby showers were hard, but not as hard as the announcements, because the announcements, like, they just got you. Where the baby showers, I also enjoyed because I wanted to celebrate them, you know? Like,
and I think you can prepare a little bit more for the baby showers. You know they're coming up.
For sure.
You can kind of get yourself in the zone to be excited. Where I do think the announcements, like, they can catch you off guard, or you're like happily scrolling in the morning, not thinking anything bad, and then you see one and your whole day's gone to
poo-poo.
Yeah.
You get your period, and then I would have to go to work where I work with moms and babies, and like not everybody has the healthiest story, and I would have all these patients telling me, oh, this is my third kid, I didn't meant to, or I'm having a kid and I didn't want one. Like, that's all I would remember, and that's all I would take in. And then in my head, I'm just like, okay, all these people who like literally didn't even want to have kids are now having kids, and I can't get pregnant. And then I would be scrolling Instagram on my break, and then all of a sudden all of these people are announcing, like, I just felt like every person in the world was getting pregnant except for me. And my aunt even said that to me because she had a very long fertility journey, and she said, now that you're trying to get pregnant, have you realized that every person around you is now getting pregnant? And it's just, what did Jeff say it was?
I don't know, but there is a syndrome. It's
like the something effect. The
Bader
Meinhof, Bayer.
I don't know, but it happened too. When my sister was diagnosed with breast cancer, all of a sudden it was in every book I read, someone was diagnosed with breast cancer. In every show I read, of course, Grey's Anatomy, it came up, and I was like, breast cancer is now everywhere. Like, it's one of those things that once it comes up in your life, you notice it everywhere.
You notice it all the time.
Yeah.
It's called the Bader-Meinhof phenomenon.
Yeah.
And I think Jeff also called it the frequency bias, but I don't know. I don't see that. But I believe him. He's smart.
Yeah.
But once you decide you want to grow your family, then all of a sudden everybody in the world is growing their family. And it hurts in a different way than, there's a lot of people who are either like single or they're in a relationship and they want to get married and it's just not happening. And then like every time there's like an announcement, like an engagement announcement, like, yes, that still stings, that still hurts. But there's a layer to trying to conceive where you doubt your body's ability to actually carry out like what society tells us, like in air quotes, we're meant to do. Like our whole purpose in life is to bear children. I don't actually agree with that, but like that's what society is telling us.
That's totally what society tells us.
Why in like the 30s women weren't allowed to ride bikes because they thought that we would injure our reproductive organs. Well, joke's on you, old man, they're inside. But
no, society does. And when you turn 30, you better be having kids. Like there's so much pressure. It's better than it was before. It was like early 20s. You need to have kids. You need to be married in your early 20s and start having kids right away. And now it has pushed back a little bit in age, which is good. But there's just so much pressure. You go to every family event and every aunt and uncle is asking you, oh, when are you going to have babies? When are you going to have babies? Like, people don't mean to put the pressure and add to it, but they do.
They do.
Like, people just don't think about those things when they ask you those questions.
Some people are also very ignorant and like, we don't need to be asking people, when are you having children? Like, we've talked about this before, that like, if it's a close friend, it's reasonable to ask, like, do you want to have children? Like, like that is a different question than, hey, you're married now, when are you popping out some kids? Because
hello. Some people are like clock stick, and some people will do that. And you're like, okay, thanks. I didn't need that pressure. Thank you very much.
Exactly. I had people like make comments to me about like, oh, you're getting into your 30s, like you better do it now. And I'm just like, what was that quote that I said to you, that you bet if you say everything happens for a reason, expect to be slapped in the face because like I did it for a reason or whatever. Like, I wish that we could just slap people
for being ignorant.
Actually, like, we don't need more. Women don't need more pressure on themselves. And like,
we already put so much pressure.
Exactly.
Like, we do it. We're the worst critics, right? We do it ourselves. We don't need everyone else out there adding their 2 cents and their pressure on top of it.
Definitely. We don't need more layers involved.
Yeah.
Do you have like a memorable moment in your TTC journey? Obviously getting pregnant is memorable, but like, do you have any moments where you either like turned a corner and became more positive, or do you have a moment of like the hardest part looking back, or did it all just kind of suck?
So it's hard for me to remember because my pregnancy was also so bad. Like,
That this now just seems...
That's what I remember. When I think back to like trying to conceive in my pregnancy journey, like I remember the bad of the pregnancy, that I remember being so negative trying to conceive. And I have another condition. I have literally so many, and I don't even believe all of them. I think doctors just like to label things, so they keep diagnosing me, and I think there's probably more to it. But interstitial cystitis, so I feel like I have bladder infections a lot. So I think I don't even know how many times I saw the doctor for like bladder infections, and they wanted to put me on antibiotics. I'm like, but it doesn't actually grow culture because there's no bacteria. And anyways, so I was just in so much pain, and the amount of times that I spent like just crying on my bathroom floor or sitting on the toilet to like get relief from the pain and just crying. Like it just... So I remember those bad moments, but I don't think I ever really turned a corner. I think it was just crappy, and then my pregnancy was crappy, and then I was like, of course, this is going to suck for me. Like, why would my body work now? And we'll talk about that in another episode. Yeah. But so I don't think I think it was just bad. I don't really.
And did you feel like, oh, all of these negative feelings are just going to go away when I get pregnant, and then I'll feel hopeful? And then you got pregnant and you were even like less hopeful?
Totally. I thought for sure as soon as I see that positive line, like those 2 lines, it's like angels are going to come out and sing and all will be right in the world. And I was not like that either. I was happy. There was moments of happiness when I found out, but it was not an overwhelming joy like I thought it would be. Like it was happy, but there was just so much else going on that I just thought I was going to lose the baby. I didn't think it would happen. I didn't think it would stick. And then there's all of that, right? So it was never really a positive experience. I don't know. What about you? Did you have a good turning point? I know you said you had that
I did
at the very end there.
Have a positive turning point come, like I was getting close to the 1 year mark, and I actually started sharing more about it on Instagram. I just like posted a picture of us from Christmas and was like, I think it would have been 2021. And I was like, 2021 was like a year we got married. It was supposed to be the year that we got pregnant and maybe had a baby. And like, that didn't happen. Like something along those lines. I'll actually share it to our account after this goes live. But I had so much support from like people I actually knew and people that I like knew but didn't really keep in touch with anymore. My inbox, like I felt like a celebrity. Like it was like every time I opened it, I had more and more and more. And it was so cathartic to get that off my chest that like I was struggling and I felt alone, and I knew other people could relate, but it wasn't really a conversation that if somebody has not been through it, then they don't understand it. The way that like, I will never understand what it's like for somebody who truly has experienced infertility and not just a fertility journey. Like neither of us fit the criteria for infertility. So like, we will never know what it's like to either, because you didn't need any medications to get pregnant, right?
No.
Require medications, require medical intervention to actually get pregnant. That is a whole other experience.
But that is why next week, we may as well just tell you.
Yeah.
We're going to have a mom friend that we met. We met her at stroller fitness class, and she has a very, hard and long IVF journey. And she is very open about wanting to share her experience and like help other women going through this. And we just thought it's good to have another perspective from someone who like truly went through this infertility journey and IVF, and it was a years long. So we're going to have her on the show next week. So it'll be the next episode that airs will be our interview with her.
And then we'll get to all of us learn more about true infertility and how to support people going through that journey.
Yeah, what actually you should say to them and what you should not say to them. What's actually helpful.
Say.
Like
definitely.
Because it's hard. Like I have a close friend that went through it, and it's very hard to know how to support someone going through that. And so we're going to ask her some of those questions too, like how can we be better friends? Like how can we better support people going through this? Because it is hard and it's very expensive. In Canada, it's I think on average people spend about $30,000 on fertility, and that's like an average. Some people go above that. And so like it's also a financial
a burden.
Challenge,
a lot of people hit the $100,000 mark.
And that's just... But then adoption's also hard, and fostering's hard, and there's what is the right answer? It's just
the right
hard.
answer is government funded fertility support, but that's a start.
Yeah, she actually did interviews, Mel, who's going to be on next week with CTV News, and she was talking about, I guess there's a lot more government funding in Ontario. So she was saying how in BC we need more funding for it, and that was what her interviews were about that went on CTV. But maybe she'll talk a little bit about that next week too.
I think we'll look it up. I think there's 4 provinces. Quebec is one of them. Maybe Alberta, where like the first round is covered. where in BC, a lot of our extended medical doesn't even cover the medications. And apparently the medications can be the expensive part.
Yes.
But
and the retrieval's really expensive.
Yeah.
Anyways, I know a little bit about it, but I didn't go through it. So we'll let Mel actually give us the details on it.
That's next week.
Yeah.
But where were we even before this whole...
If there's a turning point.
Oh, yes. There was. Mentally, like in a positive way, I was like, hey, I've literally spent the last year being bitter and negative and not very, like there wasn't hope. So I was like, I need to have hope because at least I can then enjoy my day to day.
Yes.
And that was definitely like my mental turning point.
And what did you think when you actually finally saw a positive pregnancy test? Did it bring you the joy you expected?
Yes and no. Like, obviously it's exciting, but it wasn't like jump up and down screaming like, oh my God, because I knew that just because you get a positive test doesn't mean you have a baby. Mm-hmm. So I definitely had the like good feels like, holy crap, my body, like this happened.
Yeah.
But I also then, like, we'll talk about in our pregnancy episode that like, my mind then went to like, well, now this can happen. Now that I'm actually pregnant,
a different slew of negative thoughts came into play.
But there was like a brief moment. There was definitely like a week or two of like, holy crap, like this happened. And we actually announced our pregnancy very early to family and like close friends. I didn't actually announce it on social media till I was like 6 or 7 months pregnant, more out of just laziness than anything. But I told people because I was like, I need support no matter what happens here. And yes. I think at that point I'd hit such I was not doing well mentally overall when I got pregnant that I was like, okay, we need to put these good vibes out into the world.
Yeah.
But when I like look back at that year, I don't really have like a like worst moment or worst month. Maybe August, September. That was like when I was like, hey, this is feeling real. Like this is not going the way I anticipated. But it was all just like it's very hard to stay positive. Mm-hmm. Very hard to stay positive. And then you have everybody around you telling you just to relax. And there's also so much waiting. Like so much waiting. You have to like, you get your period and then you get to be sad for a few days. And then you have to wait until when you ovulate, which depending on the length of your cycle, mm-hmm. you don't have to wait until you ovulate, but until you're fertile, which is like right before ovulation until you ovulate. Yep. And like for some people, I have a longer cycle as you did too, right? So mine's like, well, when you have your cycle's all over the place, yeah. But mine was like 35 days. So I'm like, I have to wait an extra week compared to everybody else, yeah. Which was very annoying.
Then you test again and it's negative and then the whole new cycle starts again. And then
there would be a random month where I would ovulate early and have like a 4-week cycle, like a 28-day cycle, like once every 7 or so months. This randomly happened this month. It was joyous.
Yeah.
Nice early period. But then you would have that and then you would miss your ovulation because that was the month you were being cool and calm and like mm-hmm. not tracking ovulation. And then all of a sudden you're like, shit, I missed it. Like, yeah,
I did struggle with like, you don't want to be the negative person. Mm-hmm. Like, you don't want to be judgmental about other people's successes and you mm-hmm. like having terrible words flying through your head when you see the announcement on your screen, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you don't want to be that person that has negative thoughts about them. And so I always mm-hmm. felt like I was judging people and then being mad at myself for judging others and being like, no, like, they're their own journey. Like, they're their own story. I should be happy for them. Like, you know, like, you don't want to be that I don't know another way to say it. So you didn't want to be that person, but you were that person and it was hard to stop being that person. And like, it just... Yeah, so that 100%. Was a whole nother.
Like, you didn't want to be the person that, like, and not that I never, well, I mean, even if maybe some people do have the thoughts where they want somebody else to have a loss or they want somebody to be infertile because then they can also, like, I would say most people probably don't, but our brains can get very, very negative.
Very dark.
Very dark. That is something that somewhere your brain can go. But I think when you really sit down and think about it, you really are happy for them. But you also have that like jealousy and hurt and sadness and your own grief that you have to kind of work through. But yeah, nobody wants to be that friend. No. And it's hard. Very hard. Really hard to support people when it's something that,
you want so bad. It is. Yeah. So overall, since we're talking about the emotions of motherhood here, what emotions, if you had to pick one or a couple that actually like you would describe your trying to conceive journey, what emotions would you say were like the most prominent?
I would say like feeling defeated and like just like general defeat and left out or left behind. And like loneliness, loneliness is different. I felt left behind, then I also felt very lonely, that nobody really understood it because I didn't have infertility. I just like was going through trying to get, what about you?
Failure. Like I felt like a failure. I felt like my body was a failure and I was failing my marriage responsibilities. Like even though my husband wouldn't say that was a responsibility of a marriage.
Your
like,
wifely duties.
Right, but that it felt like I was failing as a wife and as a woman and my body was failing. So that was the biggest thing for me. But I would also say it was very lonely. And I tried to share a little bit about it with friends and like I try to be open and honest about what's going on in my life. And because, I think you need support either way. But unless someone was in that journey with you, they don't understand what's going on. Like, and I don't know a lot of people that have the same conditions I have and like vulvodynia and interstitial cystitis. And so I felt very alone in those feelings. So it was just, failure and loneliness were the two biggest things.
And then you get pregnant and you go on and get hyperemesis. So that's just a real slap in the face.
That honestly just kicked me while I'm down. But
how rude.
Yeah.
Very rude.
So those are some of the emotions that we felt in this journey. And
would you have any tips for how to, like, if anybody's like, oh shit, like this person I know they've been trying to have a baby, like what is something I could say to them? So like not somebody struggling with infertility because we don't know, we've never been through that, but what are some things that you wish people said to you? Or
I think there's nothing you can truly say that's going to make it better. I think that what made the biggest difference and like things my friends did to try to support me was just like, I'm here for you. Like, do you want to go for a walk? And like things that they knew would help de-stress me.
Yeah.
And or like my love language, food. Like they'd bring me my favorite treats when like they knew I was struggling. And
Dairy
it's like
Queen
those
French fries,
things.
if you want to bring Jen a present.
That will make me very happy. But I think my friends just kind of knew and like just saying, like, we're here for you. And they didn't necessarily need to say anything other than just saying, we're here for you. And they would show up and like just drop things off at my door and just to like let me know I was there without being like overbearing and asking a million questions.
Definitely.
What about you?
I think I wish that more people checked in with me when they themselves got pregnant. But I understand why they didn't because it's a sensitive topic. But actually I did have one friend who just kind of like asked like, how is everything going? And like didn't approach it as in like, hey, are you pregnant yet? Like, because if I didn't want to talk about it, that is not the way to get somebody to talk. Yeah. But just said like, hey, she was like, I understand like this is a difficult topic for you. And like, if me sharing about my pregnancy is difficult for you, like, please let me know. And we had like a really nice conversation about it that way. And she's like, I understand. Like she had already been in my shoes and I can't even remember how the conversation went, but she like acknowledged that like I recognize that this could be hard. And if you don't want me to be sharing about it, like just let me know, which was very thoughtful. And then she also did check in often, like, hey, how are things going? Like thinking about you today, or like, like she would know the week that I was supposed to be getting my period and would just like send a nice message. And that was very nice.
So not like straight up asking you questions, like how many times have you taken a test?
Exactly.
But just like
none of that.
Being there, right? There's something about just
being there.
Checking in and being there without being like too intrusive.
Yes. And I think that a lot of the other friends that were pregnant when I was trying to get pregnant, they were like scared to talk about it because they didn't want to like upset me. But
which is fair. I get that too, right?
100%. I've probably done that to people too. Yeah. But it's more of the like, then I felt left out, that like these are things we used to talk about all the time. But then you got pregnant, so now we don't talk about it anymore. Yes. And it just went back to the whole like feeling left out and left behind thing, that now I'm like, well, now they're all talking about like pregnancy and baby stuff, but we used to talk about.
And like, oh, shh, Karlee's coming.
Yeah, exactly. Which, was hard. So I think maybe if you are pregnant and you have a friend who is maybe trying to get pregnant at the same time as you, or you just know that's part of their journey, you can still check in with them. But then you can also say like, I understand it may be triggering for you since I am pregnant. So if we want to avoid that conversation, we can. But I just want to let you know, like, I'm thinking about you and sending you love and sending you all the baby dust. And if you don't want me sharing about my pregnancy, that's okay. Like that was a very like meaningful conversation. Like it
Very
like
honest and
very
vulnerable
honest. It meant a
conversation.
lot to me that she had like the what's it called when you awareness to recognize that like she and I were very close friends. Of course, I'm happy for her, but she had the awareness to recognize like maybe this is triggering for them. And instead of just completely not talking about it and
Cutting you out of their life for a year. Yeah.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
that was nice. But there's a lot with trying to get pregnant. And when we were looking up ideas for the Mom Day mantra, and we really struggled because a lot of them are all like, oh, when it's meant to be, it'll happen, and keep your head up, and this and that. And it's like, or there was one like, just not relax. It was like, just
let your body do its job.
Yeah, let your body do its job. Well, you know what? Some people's bodies don't do, using air quotes, its job.
You might need some medication.
Exactly.
You might need medical intervention and help, and that's okay.
That is okay. And
it's not easy for everyone.
Yeah. And I think that as like our society makes us feel like our worth is wrapped up in our ability to bear children, and it's not. Women can add so much to society, and the same way that men who cannot bear children can. So regardless of whether or not having children is part of your plan due to preference and choice, or I don't know, what would not your choice, like what infertility, either way, like you are still a valuable member of society. Yeah. Like if people make you feel like your worth is defined by your ability to bear children, poo away. Shoo.
You don't need them in your life.
You don't need them in your life.
So we're gonna let Barry Manilow do a little Mom Day mantra today. So why don't you go ahead? Thanks, Barry, for your words.
I was just singing Copacabana in my head that was actually a fun fact. Henry and my song when he was young, when he was a baby, that we would put it on and we would sing Copacabana.
So it's meant to be Barry Manilow today.
We love Barry Manilow. So here we go. Barry Manilow. And you begin again, and sometimes you lose, sometimes you win, but you begin again. Even though your heart is breaking, in time, the sun will shine and you will begin again. It's kind of like he's talking about the menstrual cycle.
Maybe that's what he was thinking when he said it.
I think so.
We just thought it was nice. It's not too in-your-face inspirational, like it's going to happen what's meant to be, but it was just a nice little uplifting, like sometimes it is hard. He's recognizing sometimes you lose, sometimes you win, right? It's not all wins. It's not all sunshine and rainbows. But
it's not all sunshine and rainbows.
Yeah. So hopefully you liked this part of our emotions and motherhood. We're going to talk about some more emotions in the next couple episodes. Yeah.
So if you have any emotions you want us to talk about, some of the stuff that's going to come up is like we're going to talk about pregnancy, postpartum, and then, the emotions around having a second kid, either like wanting to have one or being pregnant with one, kind of our situation there. And then there's lots. There's a lot of emotions. So if there's anything, what's the 7 deadly sins? We need the 7 emotions of motherhood or something.
There's probably more than that.
Yes, 700. If there's any topic in relation to that specifically you want us to talk about, let us know.
Yeah. Thanks for listening to us today. And we'll see you next week.
Happy Mom Day.
Mom Day.
Bye.